Ladies, let's be honest. How many times have you bent over backwards, sacrificed your time, your energy, your heart, and still ended up feeling unappreciated? How many times have you told yourself, if I just do more, if I just love harder, if I just give without expecting, then maybe, just maybe, he will see my worth? And yet, time and time again, you are left disappointed. Because here's the truth: men don't respect niceness, they respect standards. The moment you make your kindness unlimited, you make yourself replaceable. The moment you tolerate disrespect, you teach him it's acceptable. The moment you prioritize his comfort over your own self-worth, you lose him. Not because he leaves, but because he no longer values you. This is not about being cruel. This is not about revenge. This is about reclaiming your power. Because a man does not cherish what is handed to him, he cherishes what he had to work for. A man does not admire a woman who says yes to everything. He admires a woman who knows when to say no. Stop waiting for a man to recognize your value. Show him through your absence what he took for granted in your presence. If he does not rise to meet your standards, then he was never meant for you in the first place. You were never meant to be a doormat. You were meant to be a doorway to something greater, something stronger, something worthy. So stop being nice, start being respected. Being nice won't earn you respect. Only boundaries will. There's a dangerous belief that being nice is the key to acceptance. That if we are kind enough, patient enough, and accommodating enough, we will be valued. But the truth is, niceness without boundaries does not earn admiration. It invites exploitation. People do not respect those who constantly bend to please. They respect those who stand firm in who they are. We often confuse kindness with weakness. We think that if we keep giving, if we keep saying yes, if we keep putting others first, we will be rewarded with loyalty and appreciation. But reality doesn't work that way. When you give too much without expectation, without limits, you teach others to take without gratitude. Niceness, when unchecked, does not inspire respect, it invites entitlement. Look at the people who are admired, who command respect effortlessly. They are not the ones who are always agreeable. They are not the ones who say yes to everything. They are the ones who know their limits. They are the ones who have a standard. They are the ones who communicate clearly and unapologetically what they will and will not accept. Respect is not a product of generosity. It is a result of self-worth. When you lack boundaries, you give people permission to undervalue you. If you tolerate being ignored, you will be ignored. If you tolerate being taken for granted, you will be taken for granted. If you tolerate disrespect, you will be disrespected. Because people do not treat you based on your intentions. They treat you based on what you allow. It is not wrong to be kind. It is not wrong to be giving, but it is dangerous to be kind at the cost of your dignity. The moment you start valuing others more than yourself, the moment you start prioritizing their comfort over your own peace, you lose control of the relationship. The dynamic shifts, and suddenly you are no longer an equal. You become an option, a convenience, an afterthought. The most powerful people in this world are not those who are feared, nor those who are loved unconditionally. They are the ones who understand balance. They are the ones who can be kind but firm, compassionate but strong. They are the ones who can say no without guilt, walk away without hesitation, and stand their ground without apology. If you want to be respected, you must first respect yourself. You must set limits not as a test for others, but as a declaration of what you will accept. You must be willing to disappoint people if it means staying true to yourself. Because the reality is, not everyone will like your boundaries. Not everyone will be comfortable when you start saying no. Some will call you selfish. Some will say you've changed. Some will try to guilt you into returning to your old ways, and that is where your strength is tested. Being liked is not the same as being valued. Being agreeable is not the same as being respected. A person who values you will not leave because you have standards. A person who truly cares will not punish you for setting limits. If someone only stays in your life when you allow them to cross your boundaries, they were never there for you. They were there for what you provided. You do not earn respect by making yourself smaller, by sacrificing your voice, by accepting less than you deserve. You earn respect by showing people how you expect to be treated. You earn respect by setting boundaries and enforcing them. You earn respect by refusing to be a doormat for the sake of harmony. So stop trying to be nice in the hope that people will appreciate you. Stop saying yes when you want to say no. Stop bending to accommodate others while breaking yourself in the process. The moment you start prioritizing your own peace, the moment you stop fearing rejection, the moment you make it clear that you will not tolerate anything less than what you deserve, something shifts. The wrong people leave, the right people stay, and most importantly, you begin to respect yourself in a way you never have before. And when you respect yourself, the world follows. The more you tolerate, the more they take. Life teaches us this lesson over and over again, yet so many of us ignore it. We convince ourselves that if we just endure a little longer, if we just keep quiet, if we just let it slide one more time, things will change. But the truth is, nothing changes until you demand change. People do not stop taking advantage of you because they suddenly feel guilty. They stop when they realize they can no longer get away with it. Every time you excuse bad behavior, you teach people that there are no consequences. Every time you accept less than you deserve, you train them to expect that you will always settle. You believe you are being patient, understanding, or even selfless, but what you are really doing is lowering your own value in their eyes. The more you accept, the more they push. The more you bend, the more they break you. And before you know it, you have nothing left, no energy, no self-respect, no peace of mind, because you gave it all away without realizing it. People will always take as much as you allow them to, not because they are evil, but because that is human nature. We test limits, we push boundaries. And when we find someone who never says no, someone who always forgives, someone who never walks away, we take it as permission to continue. The problem is not that people take, the problem is that you never stop them. You think that by tolerating, you are being the bigger person, that if you just hold on, if you just give them another chance, they will finally see your worth. But they won't, because why would they? If they could keep disrespecting you, keep taking from you, keep hurting you without consequence, what incentive do they have to change? They won't respect you more for being nice. They won't appreciate you more for being patient. They will only learn that they can keep doing what they're doing, and you will always be there, accepting it. The reality is, the more you tolerate, the more they take, and the harder it becomes to regain control. Because when you finally decide you've had enough, when you finally say no, when you finally put your foot down, they will not respect your new boundaries. They will resent them. They will act as if you are the one who changed, as if you are being unreasonable, as if you are the problem. But you are not the problem. You are simply correcting the mistake you made when you allowed too much for too long. It's not your kindness that people take advantage of. It's your lack of limits. There is nothing wrong with being understanding, with being forgiving, with giving people second chances. But when those chances become endless, when your understanding becomes a license for mistreatment, you are no longer being kind. You are betraying yourself. The worst part is, deep down, you know when someone is taking too much. You feel it, the exhaustion, the frustration, the growing resentment. But instead of addressing it, you silence yourself. You tell yourself it's not worth the fight, that maybe you're overreacting, that if you just stay quiet a little longer, things will get better. But they don't. They never do. Because you cannot fix a problem by ignoring it. You cannot change people by tolerating their worst behavior. You only reinforce it. The moment you stop tolerating, everything shifts. The people who were only there because they could take advantage of you will disappear. The ones who truly respect you will adjust. And most importantly, you will regain your sense of self-worth. You will stop feeling drained, exhausted, and invisible. You will realize that your energy is sacred, that your time is valuable, that your kindness should be earned, not exploited. So stop tolerating what drains you. Stop excusing what hurts you. Stop giving endless chances to people who only take and never give. Because the truth is, people do not stop taking until you stop giving them permission. And the moment you do, you will see just how much power you always had, but were too afraid to use. A man values what he has to earn, not what is given freely. It's a truth that echoes across every aspect of life. What comes easy is often taken for granted, while what requires effort, sacrifice, and discipline is held in the highest regard. This applies to relationships, careers, success, and personal growth. When something is given too easily, it loses its worth in the eyes of the receiver. It is only through struggle, perseverance, and investment that true appreciation is developed. Consider the way people treat wealth. A man who works tirelessly, who invests years of his life in building something from the ground up, will guard his earnings with a deep sense of pride. He will think twice before wasting it because he understands the value of each dollar. But the man who receives wealth without effort, without sacrifice, often squanders it. It is not because he is necessarily careless, but because he never had to struggle to obtain it. Without the weight of effort, the value diminishes. This principle applies to relationships as well. A man does not truly appreciate what is handed to him without any challenge, without any standard to uphold. If something or someone is too easily accessible, he does not feel the need to protect, cherish, or respect it. It becomes another possession, another convenience, another thing that can be replaced without consequence. But when a man has to prove himself, when he has to earn the right to be in someone's life, he treats that person with a different level of regard. He understands that what is rare and difficult to obtain is worth protecting. Women in particular often make the mistake of thinking that by giving everything, love, time, devotion, freely and unconditionally, they will earn loyalty and appreciation. But human nature does not work that way. A man does not value what requires no effort. He may enjoy it, he may entertain it, but he does not respect it. Respect comes from effort, from the realization that something is not easily replaceable. The more a woman gives without requiring anything in return, without setting standards, without demanding respect, without expecting reciprocity, the more she diminishes her own value in his eyes. This is not about playing games. It is not about manipulation. It is about understanding a fundamental law of human behavior. We value what we invest in. We cherish what we have to work for. If something is too easy, it does not hold significance. It becomes background noise, something we assume will always be there, something we take for granted. But when we have to put in time, effort, and commitment, our mindset shifts. We protect what we earn because we remember the struggle it took to attain it. Look at the most successful individuals in any field. The ones who dominate their industry, the ones who achieve greatness, are not the ones who were handed everything on a silver platter. They are the ones who fought for it. The athletes who train relentlessly, the entrepreneurs who risk everything, the leaders who make sacrifices. The effort they put in is what makes their success meaningful. If greatness were handed to them without struggle, it would not hold the same value. The same applies to personal growth. A man who is handed wisdom without experience rarely applies it. But the man who learns through hardship, through trial and error, through overcoming obstacles, he carries that wisdom with him for life. Pain and struggle shape him. They force him to evolve, to refine his character, to become something more than he was before. This is why the strongest men are often the ones who have endured the most. They understand that nothing truly valuable comes without effort. Stop expecting gratitude for your sacrifices. They weren't requested. Too often, people give and give, pouring their energy, time, and love into others, expecting recognition in return. They assume that their sacrifices will be acknowledged, appreciated, and reciprocated. But when the gratitude doesn't come, when the people they gave so much to fail to acknowledge their effort, they feel betrayed. Resentment builds. Anger takes root. They begin to wonder, how could they not see what I've done for them? But the hard truth is this: nobody asked you to sacrifice yourself. Nobody demanded that you put your needs aside. And because of that, nobody feels obligated to reward you for it. Sacrifice, when made with an expectation of appreciation, is not truly selfless. It is transactional. It is a silent deal you make in your mind, an unspoken agreement where you assume that if you give enough, people will give back. But reality doesn't work that way. People don't value what they didn't ask for. They don't see the invisible weight you've carried on their behalf, the silent struggles you endured for their benefit. They only see what they needed from you, what they expected from you, and what they believe they were entitled to receive. When you sacrifice your own needs, when you put others before yourself repeatedly, believing that one day they will look back and recognize your effort, you are setting yourself up for disappointment. Because the truth is, most people don't look back. They move forward. They take what was given, use what was offered, and continue on with their lives. Not because they are cruel or selfish, but because they never knew the cost of your sacrifice. They never asked you to carry that burden. In their eyes, you made a choice. And choices come with consequences, not necessarily rewards. The hardest lesson to learn is that just because you gave doesn't mean people will give back. Just because you showed up for them doesn't mean they will show up for you. Just because you chose them over yourself doesn't mean they will ever do the same. The expectation of gratitude is what destroys you. It turns your giving into a burden, your kindness into frustration, your love into resentment. Because when you expect something in return for what you freely offered, you turn generosity into a form of control. You give it, but with strings attached. And when those strings are not acknowledged, you feel betrayed. You must accept that your sacrifices are yours alone. If you give, give because it aligns with your values. Give because it brings you joy, not because you expect something in return. If you put others before yourself, do it because you genuinely want to, not because you are hoping they will one day recognize your worth. Because the moment you start expecting gratitude, you will be disappointed. Not because people are ungrateful, but because they didn't ask for the weight you chose to carry. It is easy to believe that people owe you something for all that you've done. That because you have been there for them, they should be there for you. That because you have sacrificed, they should acknowledge it. But this mindset only leads to pain. The truth is, people do not owe you recognition for choices you made freely. If you stay late at work, if you give up your dreams for someone else, if you bend over backward to accommodate others, it is still your decision. And when you begin to resent the people you made those choices for, you are not really angry at them, you are angry at yourself for expecting something they never promised. The most freeing realization is that you do not have to sacrifice yourself to be worthy. You do not have to give endlessly to be valued. You do not have to break yourself just to be seen. If someone only appreciates you when you are suffering for them, that is not love, that is dependency. And if you are only giving because you want recognition, then it is not kindness, it is an attempt to buy affection. The moment you stop expecting gratitude, you reclaim your power. You stop giving out of obligation and start giving out of genuine intention. You stop sacrificing yourself for people who wouldn't do the same for you. You stop seeking validation from those who never saw your worth in the first place. And most importantly, you start living for yourself. Because at the end of the day, the only person who truly understands the cost of your sacrifices is you. And that has to be enough. Kindness is a gift, but without limits, it becomes a weakness. There is strength in kindness. It has the power to heal, to connect, to uplift. A kind word can change someone's entire day, and an act of compassion can restore faith in humanity. But when kindness lacks boundaries, when it is given without restraint, it turns into a vulnerability that others will exploit. People admire kindness, but they also take advantage of it. If you are always the one who gives, who forgives, who understands, who accommodates, there will come a time when people stop appreciating it. They begin to expect it. And once kindness becomes an expectation rather than a gift, it loses its power. The more you give without limits, the more people assume they are entitled to what you offer. And before you realize it, your kindness becomes a trap, one that drains you, weakens you, and leaves you feeling used. There is a fine line between being kind and being taken for granted. The difference is not in what you give, but in how you allow people to treat you. If your kindness comes without boundaries, people will push you further and further, testing how much you are willing to tolerate. They will take without giving. They will demand without appreciating. They will assume that no matter how they treat you, you will always be there, always understanding, always forgiving. And when you finally reach your breaking point, when you can no longer take the disrespect, they will act surprised. They will call you selfish. They will say you changed. But the truth is, they never valued your kindness in the first place. They only valued what they could get from it. Kindness should never come at the cost of your dignity. If your kindness requires you to betray yourself, to neglect your needs, to tolerate mistreatment, then it is no longer kindness. It is self-destruction. You must learn to set limits, to say no when necessary, to walk away from those who do not appreciate your efforts. Because true kindness does not mean allowing yourself to be a doormat. It does not mean saying yes to everything, agreeing to every request, or sacrificing yourself for people who would never do the same for you. Boundaries do not make you unkind. They make your kindness meaningful. When you set limits, you teach people how to respect you. You show them that while you are generous, you are not to be used. While you are compassionate, you are not to be taken advantage of. While you are forgiving, you are not to be disrespected. Think about the strongest people you know. They are not the ones who allow others to mistreat them under the guise of being nice. They are not the ones who let people walk all over them just to keep the peace. They are the ones who give generously but wisely, who help others but also demand respect, who show kindness but never at the expense of their self-worth. The reality is, people will treat you the way you allow them to. If you never say no, if you never enforce consequences, if you always put others before yourself, you are teaching them that your kindness has no limits, that they can take, and you will always be there, unquestioning, unshaken. But when you set boundaries, when you let people know that your kindness is a privilege, not a right, they begin to value it more. They begin to see that you are not simply kind, you are strong. And strength commands respect. Kindness without limits is not kindness. It is a weakness that others will exploit. The most powerful form of kindness is the kind that comes with boundaries, the kind that says, I will give, but I will not be used. I will help, but I will not be drained. I will forgive, but I will not be disrespected. When you master this balance, your kindness becomes a true gift, one that is valued, appreciated, and never taken for granted. If you don't set the standard, he will set it for you, and you won't like the result. Every relationship, every interaction, every dynamic between two people operates on an unspoken agreement, an understanding of what is acceptable and what is not. The problem arises when you leave that understanding up to someone else, assuming they will naturally respect your boundaries, value your worth, and meet your expectations without you having to define them. That is a mistake, because if you don't set the standard, he will. And more often than not, his standard will benefit him, not you. People will only rise to the level that is required of them. If you demand nothing, they will give you nothing. If you tolerate inconsistency, they will become inconsistent. If you allow disrespect, they will continue to disrespect you. The way you let someone treat you in the beginning is the way they will treat you in the end. The moment you fail to establish what you deserve, you silently agree to accept whatever they choose to give. The mistake many people make is assuming that love, care, or attraction is enough to make someone do right by them. They believe that if they are kind enough, patient enough, forgiving enough, the other person will naturally respect them. But that is not how human nature works. Respect is not given freely, it is established. It is reinforced. It is demanded. And if you are unwilling to demand it, you cannot expect to receive it. The reality is, everyone operates based on what they can get away with. This doesn't mean people are inherently bad. It just means they respond to the rules that are set before them. If you don't require effort, he won't put in effort. If you don't hold him accountable, he won't hold himself accountable. If you allow him to walk all over you, he won't hesitate to do so, because in his mind, if you had a problem with it, you would say something. If it truly mattered to you, you would make it clear. Some people believe that setting standards will push others away. They fear that if they ask for too much, they will be seen as high maintenance, difficult, or hard to please. But the truth is, standards don't push away the right people, they push away the wrong ones. They filter out those who are never serious about treating you with respect. They weed out the ones who are only there for convenience, not commitment. Because the right person will not be intimidated by your standards. They will rise to meet them. The wrong person, however, will try to lower them. The most dangerous thing you can do in any relationship is assume that someone else will just do the right thing without you having to say anything. That is how you lose yourself. That is how you wake up months or years later realizing you've been settling for less than you deserve. You don't end up in bad situations overnight. You get there one compromise at a time. One ignored red flag, one moment where you silenced your intuition because you didn't want to come off as too much. When you set the standard, you take control, you dictate the terms, you make it clear what is and isn't acceptable. And if someone is unwilling to meet that standard, you let them go, because you would rather be alone than be with someone who treats you as an option. You would rather wait for the right person than waste time with the wrong one. The truth is, the way you allow someone to treat you is the way they will continue to treat you. If you don't set the standard, someone else will, and that standard will never be in your favor. Respect is not given freely. It is established through the boundaries you enforce and the expectations you uphold. People will only rise to the level that is required of them, so if you accept less, you will receive less. But when you make it clear what you deserve, when you refuse to settle for anything beneath your worth, you create space for the right people to enter your life. So let this be a reminder. Never be afraid to demand respect. Never hesitate to walk away from what doesn't serve you. And never lower your standards just to keep someone who isn't willing to rise to meet them. Because the moment you compromise your worth, you give away your power. Thank you for listening, and remember, your standards define your value. Set them high and never apologize for it.